Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for our presentation, Your Guide to an IEP That Works. I am Tasha Littles. I am the Director of Parent Support Network, a project housed under Family Network on Disabilities. We are a 501(c) nonprofit, and our goal is to provide resources, information, and support to families who have children with disabilities. We are not medical professionals. We are not attorneys, and we are not paralegals. So it is not in our scope of work to provide any of those services. What we do is utilize our lived experience and guidance and information passed down to us from our funders, the Office of Special Education Programs, to support families in navigating their child's education. So now that you guys have gotten a brief introduction, let me share my screen so that everyone can follow along. Okay, we don't want to miss any of the good steps, so let me start from the beginning. So again, welcome. This is about the individual education plan. So IDEA, or Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is an act that identifies 6 principles: free and appropriate education, your individual education plan, an appropriate evaluation, parent and student participation, which is key. We'll talk about that more a little bit later. Least restrictive environment, and your procedural safeguards. An IEP is a written statement for each child with a disability that has been developed, reviewed, and revised with Section 614. So your team consists of you, the parent, you, the student, your exceptional student education teacher, your general education teacher, your local education agency, which is your LEA, your psychologist, your therapist, that could be speech, occupational and physical, guidance counselors, interpreters if English is a second language for you, family, friends, and even others may make up your IEP team. Throughout the presentation, I will try my best to go over the abbreviated words. In the land of ESC, we utilize a lot of acronyms, so I'll try my best not to forget any of them as I'm going through the presentation. Response to intervention, or the multi-tiered system of supports. You can see it talks about academics and behavior. So what does that mean for you? At the bottom, you'll see these are academic behaviors that the general education teacher or the contained classroom teacher or special education teacher would utilize for everyone in the class. So if there was a standard school-wide, this is how we address this specific behavior, that is what all the students would receive. Then as you go up a little bit higher in the tiered, since we're talking about behavior, we would put together a few interventions for a small group of kids that needed more support with their behavior. And then you can see at the top, which is our third tier, which is your most needed interventions. So students in this area may have a functional behavioral assessment that resulted in a behavioral intervention plan. The special education process, it is a process, and it is a continuous process. So your first step in this process is your pre-referral. That may mean someone saying, hey, or you noticing that your child is not meeting certain milestones, and then from there you get a referral, and then you get identified as that child gets identified with one of the 14 criteria under IDEA. Then they become eligible for free and appropriate education under IDEA. From that point on, this process, you start developing that IEP with your team. And with that Development becomes implementation of that IEP. Because it's a fluid document, it's going to keep working throughout the school year for your child. And within that document, you may have evaluations and reviews. So let's put all the pieces together. In your IEP, you'll have things like the present levels of performance, which we affectionately known as the PLOPs. From those present levels, you get measurable goals. So an example, if your child is going into the second grade, you would look at those second grade standards and you would make a goal based on that second grade standard because you want to close the education gap from your child with a disability with their non-typical peers, or their atypical peers. From your measurable goals, you'll get something called an explanation of progress. How are we doing? Are we doing good? Or do we have more work to do? That's your explanation of progress. Then you go into description of services. This is where a lot of your related services are housed. Your PT, your OT, any applied behavioral analysis, ABA. Then placement, where are you going to be receive these services? Where are these goals going to be met? When we talked a little bit earlier about least restrictive environment, we want to know, are all these goals going to be met in the general education classroom? Who is going to provide those services in what placement? And then accommodations and modifications. Accommodations, modifications, very different, but we'll get to that a little bit later. The amount of time that it takes to complete that goal, or and the statement of transition. So present levels of performance. You have these 5 domains. So you have curriculum and learning, social emotional behavior. This is where your mental health support would come in and what is needed for your child to feel like they are a part of the class or whatever placement is chosen. What is their independent functioning? Can they do it by themselves? And how can we help them become more independent? Healthcare plan. Does your child have asthma? Is there a certain plan that we need to put in place? Do you need to drop something off at the nurse's office? And communication. This is where you would have your speech therapist or your occupational therapist to talk about communication and what you wanted to see from your child. So SMART measurable goals. You want to make sure that your goals are specific, measurable. You can attain them within the allotted time that you specified. They're realistic for a child and their present levels, and that they're timely. So is this what everyone else is doing to meet this goal or to meet this standard? Then you have the explanation of progress, which is just that. It is how far have we come to meet the goal? Then you get into the description of services. So specialized instruction, where and who is going to provide that instruction? Is that instruction going to come from the general education teacher, the ESE inclusion teacher? Is it going to come from an itinerant staff? Who is going to provide that specialized instruction? Related services, and this is not an exhaustive list, but I mentioned them before. Your PT, your physical therapy, your OT, your occupational therapy, your speech therapy, your ABA person. And then you have things like supplementary services. Placement and least restrictive environment. So least restrictive environment is fully included. So your child is in the general education classroom for 100% of the day. Your child may be in the pull-out part-time, so they're in that general education classroom, but their ESE inclusion teacher pulls them out, or their related service person pulls them out so that they can work with them on a specific goal that you've outlined in the IEP. Or placement could be in ESE class full-time, which we call contained classrooms, for students who need a smaller environment so that they can meet their goals that you as the team set out to make sure they accomplished. Then you have ESC or alternative schools, which we know to be center schools, which the entire school have children with IEPs. Hospital homebound, so students who may have terminal illnesses or may have high anxiety. It just depends, but you and your IEP team will make that decision on whether your child needs hospital homebound. And that's where a teacher actually comes into the home and supports the student one-on-one for the specialized time that you all have chosen to put in the IEP. And then you have something called a residential school. So accommodations and modifications, you want to make sure you're making the right choice. The Florida Department of Education recently being 2018, updated their accommodations and modification books. So you want to make sure you're putting the right thing for your child in that space. It could be something like extended time on your test. That was an example of an accommodation. Your modification would be actually changing that test question so so it's more understandable for that student. Amount and duration. This is a question that I think most people at the IEP table, we ask all the time, right? How long, how many, how much time will it take for this student to meet this goal? Then we're looking at transition. So you see your course of study, post-school outcomes, age of majority, and self-determination. In the state of Florida, transition starts at age 14. That is the time that implementation of that transition IEP should go into effect. We are lucky here in the state of Florida that it is lower at 14, so students can have a better understanding of what they want to do for their post-school outcomes. This is a time where you declare your track and what diploma option that you would want. Special factors. Your special factors are going to be things like behavior, assistive technology, communication needs, English language learner, even are you blind and visually impaired, and deaf of hard of hearing. Those are what we consider special factors in the IEP. Extended school year. Who doesn't love extended school year? So extended school year has 7 different criteria that it can follow for your child to receive extended school year. So you're continuing to work on that goal. So the first one would be regression. Does your child forget things after a long period of time? Do they go back to older behaviors that they normally wouldn't have? Recoupment. Are they looking to recover a grade? Number 3 says regression and recoupment, but this should be emerging skills. So is your child working on a skill, and if they don't receive extended school year, they will lose the mastery of that skill? 4, mastery. How are we going to get our child to be proficient in this area? Self-sufficiency and independence. So that's where your extended school year could have ABA, where you're including more supports for that behavioral side so that child can be independent. And that's just an example. Successive interruptions and the severity of the disability. So extended school year looks different in every county, and you should check with your LEA, your local education agency, the person who writes your IEPs at your school, to see what extended school year looks like in your county. Keep in mind that the IEP is a process. You want to make sure that you understand it. You ask questions if you don't understand it. You plan. It is so important that you don't look at your IEP just one time a year, that you make sure that you're looking at it throughout the year so you can follow and be a support, if you're a parent, to be a support to that teacher who is making sure your child is meeting those goals. You're writing and you're also monitoring those present levels of performance. So here are a few tips to succeed. You want to make sure you build strong relationships. What does that mean? That means you are a team. There's no voice that's too small and there's no voice that's too big. You want to make sure that you are making sure that your child is receiving everything that they need. Remember, the person who's sitting, if you're a parent, the person who's sitting on the other side of the table is spending more time with your child than you are during the week. I know it's that's that's a lot of time. So you want to make sure that you're attending all of the meetings that your school needs. And in this age, you can utilize technology. So if you can't make it there in person, talk to your LEA about possibly doing a virtual IEP, which I believe most schools are doing now because of COVID. You want to make sure that you're attending all the meetings. And if you can't attend it, make sure you are scheduling for a time or rescheduling for a time that you can. In your IEP, your signature only confirms that you were there. So if you refuse to sign the IEP, that just means you weren't there. And also, you want to organize your records. Your IEP could be 20, 30, and even 40 pages long. You want to make sure you're organizing it in a way that you understand it, and in a way that if you needed to support your general education teacher, your ESC teacher, or even your LEA, you would be able to find that information quickly and from your records and give it to that person. So what can you bring to an IEP? Well, you can bring cookies. You can definitely bring snacks. Some meetings are long, some meetings are short, but you can bring lots of different things to your IEP. You can bring additional evaluations, you can bring additional reviews, you can bring whatever you need, but just make sure you are addressing your child's needs and what you're bringing. A lot of families bring a binder and have a picture of their student or their loved one on the front of that binder as a reminder that everything that you're doing in that meeting is to make sure this child has the most independent life possible because of the decisions that everyone is making at this table. So as I promised, here's a little bit about the house the F&D built. We have Parents of the Panhandle. We have Parent Support Network, which I am the director of. We have Parent Education Network. We have Family Star that supports our families that have medically complex children. We have United Families Children Mental Health that supports students and professionals and parents across the state of Florida with getting mental health needs. We also have our Dadvocates program and F&D Trust Services, which are all housed under Family Network on Disabilities. I want to take this time to point out some of our really cool ESC downloadable resources. We have a sound bank. So if you're looking for just one place to get lots of sounds, maybe your child has an aversion to certain sounds, it's there. If you're looking for a specific social story, you're definitely welcome to go there and adapt it to meet your needs. We have F&D University, which is a non-accredited online system that is designed for you to work at your own pace. And of course, we have our information in Spanish because we are a diverse state, and we need our presentations, documents, and downloadable resources that are all in Spanish. You can see our Facebook page, which is our main Facebook page, Family Network on Disabilities. Then you can see our Instagram and our Twitter account, and of course, our main website. If you're looking specifically for Parent Support Network, you can go to F&D PSN, type that in your search bar for Google or on Facebook, and you will find us. I want to take this time to thank you for spending this time with me to learn about individual education plans. And I hope to see you, work with you, and encourage you sometime soon. Bye.